Yeah, so I've been in Hong Kong since 1993, but it was 2003 when I set up Blacksmith Books. I was actually lucky. I was saved from publishing my own writing by meeting Frank Fishbeck from Formation Books. I was writing a column at the time in the South China Morning Post Sunday magazine about hiking, and I thought after a while I should probably make a guidebook out of this. These are, good routes to follow. And while I was making those plans, Frank Fishbeck contacted me. He said, "I've seen your columns in the SUMP. Would you like to make these into a book? You do the words, I'll do the photos," because Frank's a photographer. So I said, "Yes, please. That would be fantastic." Because it's always best not to publish your own work. It's best to publish to be published by others because they've got more judgment on what has value and what doesn't. So strangely, in the year I set up Blacksmith Books, it was also the year that Frank Fishbeck published my Hiker's Guide to Hong Kong, which I think was 2003. So it was really great to meet Frank at Formatia because he'd been publishing books since, I think, 1975, a very long time, and he really knew how to do it. And as I was to find out, he's a real craftsman in the way he puts books together, the time he takes over them, the quality of design and photography. Prior to this, I'd actually been publishing a magazine rather than books. And magazines are always quite rushed, they're very different to books. So I'd been hiking in Hong Kong since I arrived in 1993. I come from London, which is quite hilly, but it's not got mountains in it. Hong Kong's very lucky that you can jump on a minibus, a green minibus, end up in a village, then start hiking, and very soon you're on top of a mountain looking down at the city. It's quite unusual in that way. So we put this guidebook together, and it became quite a success. It sold, I can't remember how many print runs, but quite a lot. So eventually we decided to expand it. We made it into 3 different books. So the Serious Hiker's Guide was for the long distance trails. The Leisurely Hiker's Guide was for shorter walks. And then later on, I think around 2000, we did the Heritage Hiker's Guide, which was for city walks, looking at buildings which had some heritage value and we thought might not survive much longer. And that did come true because 20 years later, if you read that book, if you follow those trails, a lot of the buildings are gone already. That's Hong Kong. So I think what gave Frank the interest to publish a book about hiking in Hong Kong is that he always went hiking himself. And I think he went with his staff from the office. They went out every weekend. And Frank would carry a very heavy medium format camera because he's a photographer by trade. I believe he came to Hong Kong after photographing the Vietnam War in the 1960s, 1970s. So he had the skill to take wonderful photos and also the patience to wait until the weather was correct for a photo. But what also impressed me about him and the way he carried out his publishing is that he would find the right person to do different jobs. So for this book, Frank took the photos, I wrote the words for the trails, but then he found to write the foreword a man called Peter Moss, who'd lived in Hong Kong for probably 40 years, knew it better than anyone else, and that really set the tone for the book to give it some background about why you should start exploring Hong Kong. So I was very impressed that he brought in different people to work on the book. Maybe I have some of the prints, the colour proofs. Hang on, wait. I might have kept some of those. I wonder what I did with them. Maybe not. No, I'll find them later. I had some big prints he did of the photos, but yeah. Because actually he didn't put his name on them, right? He's very modest. Yeah. Very. He didn't want to take the fame. Yeah. And the camera is very heavy, right? He used the old style camera. Yeah. Hiking up the hill carrying this heavy thing. Yeah. There goes the colour proofs for those. So for the past year, I've been doing an update for the Serious Hiker's Guide and the Leisurely Hiker's Guide. Every time they've been republished in the past, we've updated them, to see which trails have changed, because some new trails have opened, some trails have been diverted by landslides or that sort of thing. So for this one, I've spent the past 7 months or so re-walking the trails, and it's reminded me how much walking I had to do for the first edition, because it's been about 400 miles of walking, and due to my excellent skills in timing, I've done most of it during the summer. So that's been a real ordeal, a pleasurable ordeal. What I've found, I still go hiking every week, usually in Hong Kong. I try and take a day off every week and go hiking, and I try never to do the same route twice. And I've found over 30 years, I'm still able to find new places all the time, because when you look at Hong Kong from the air, it looks quite small. What is it, 1,000 square miles or kilometers, I forget. But it's actually very mountainous, so it's very folded. So you find it's full of valleys, forested valleys, hidden bays, abandoned villages, sort of forested slopes, hills you've never seen before until you came around the corner, saw a new view. So I find I'm often looking for new trails. Sometimes they end up being trails that have been made by wild cows and they peter out at the edge of a cliff. Sometimes they lead me down to a valley I've never been to before, which comes out to a beach I've never been to before. So it's quite amazing that after all these years, I'm still able to find new routes in this very dense backwoods area that Hong Kong has. So one of the things about book publishing as well is that you never know how well a book is going to sell until you've got it on the shelves. It's very speculative. It's very, it's a big gamble all the time. So these hiking guides did very well. I think they went into 12 print runs or something like that. But we don't really know who bought them. I assume it's largely people who live here who want to hike. It could be tourists. It could be people overseas who are just armchair traveling. We never know. So going on from that, the books I've published since 2003, I've published about 200. They're all about Hong Kong in one way or another. They're all written by either Hong Kong locals or expats, people who've lived in Hong Kong. And I thought the market would be mostly in Hong Kong, which it is mostly, but only about half the books sell in Hong Kong. About a third of them I usually sell to people in the US or Canada. And I've no idea who these people are or why they've got an interest in Hong Kong. But it's lucky that we're able to reach them with our distribution through bookstores overseas. So when I started publishing, it was around 2003, I found there was a little ecosystem of small presses in Hong Kong, mostly publishing in Chinese, some publishing in English, some publishing bilingually, but usually quite small, a small crew of people running them. And we started up a small collective of publishers for a while called Independent Publishers of Hong Kong. That worked quite well. It helped us exhibit at fairs together and even travel overseas together to show off our books. But I did find that staying in business as a publisher is quite hard. You need to find a niche, ideally a niche of subjects that you then carry on publishing in order that readers who've enjoyed your past books are then going to come to you for others in the same subject line. So most successful publishers will have a niche, and my niche became usually real life stories from Hong Kong, either stories about people's lives in Hong Kong, stories by people who've lived in Hong Kong, that sort of thing. And I thought actually at the start that I would have to set out a list of books that I wanted to publish, then start commissioning them. But that never happened, because almost from day one, as soon as I opened, I started receiving manuscripts from people from all over the place, mostly in Hong Kong, but also overseas, people who'd lived in Hong Kong before, even a long time ago. And so I started sifting through these manuscripts to find out what I would think would be viable to publish. And among these, actually, some authors had been previously published by other presses, but then those presses had either gone out of business or they'd closed because the owners couldn't work out, couldn't get their stride, couldn't work out what would sell. So among these, a few authors I republished. These authors had their books published in Hong Kong before. The presses had disappeared in some cases, and so I was able to republish them in new editions, and that helped keep those books alive, helped get them back into the bookshops, and helped keep their stories available for people to read into the future. because then he said, oh, I also had this book with Asia 2000, but they never paid me royalties. Then they disappeared. Would you like to republish it? So I said, yeah. So I actually wrote letters to Asia 2000 saying, can we republish? But no reply. So as he had the copyright, I republished it. And also another author as well, Fred Schneider. I republished one of his that was previously, I think, Asia 2000. Yeah. So this is lucky that it kept their books alive at least. Yeah. Because I think Mike just disappeared, right, overnight. Nobody knew where he went. He didn't pay anyone. This is not the first time it happened in publishing, I think. But, you know, of what you publish, out of every 10 books, how many will be a success? For a lot of publishers, for a lot of large publishers, I believe it's 1 book in 10 succeeds. 9 fail, but the other 1 makes enough money to pay for all the others. When you're a smaller publisher, you can't really take that gamble. You can't publish 9 and lose money on 9 books in the hope of making money on 1. You've got to be more careful. You've got to publish to that niche, as I said earlier, of the books your audience is looking for. In my case, true stories from Hong Kong. So I found since then that I tend to get it right 2/3 of the time. So out of 10 books I publish, 7 will succeed, 3 won't find an audience. But I don't even mind about those 3 books that didn't really work, because I still found them worthy of publishing. You know, it's not something you do entirely for profit in publishing. It's partly you've got to keep selling books to stay in business, to pay for the next print runs, but also you've got a bit of a responsibility to publish some books that need to be published, need to come out there, particularly by people who may not have a voice in any other means. So I find myself very fortunate to receive these manuscripts, and I have to use my judgment to work out what's going to sell and what isn't going to sell. But even sometimes I find some books and I think this isn't going to sell, but it's quite an important story. I think the author needs to be heard, so I'll publish it anyway. And to me, that's the responsibility that lies in publishing as well. Yeah. Gurkhas as well, yeah, the army, yeah, you're right, yeah. Actually, that was one I published because, you know, I didn't think it would sell well, but I think the guy needs a voice, you know. As a Nepalese soldier, he has no voice normally, so I thought it was important to publish that, to bring it out. Yeah. I think that the point is quite important, really, about giving people a voice, right? You know, yeah. And on the issue of some manuscripts being quite important, because I think they give the author a voice, especially when those voices aren't often heard. I published this book by Tim Gurung, who's a local ex-soldier who was in the Gurkha regiment in Hong Kong. Now, there are a lot of Nepalese living in Hong Kong. You can see them everywhere, but you don't often hear about their life stories, especially the ones who've been in the army. And so I thought, you know, when Tim came to me with this idea, explaining the Gurkha's experience, I thought that's fantastic. I don't know about it. I wonder how many other people living in Hong Kong don't know about it either. And so we put this book out, and hopefully it reaches people who would never have heard this story before, but also tells you something about a hidden layer of Hong Kong society. These, you know, tens of thousands of Nepalese who live here. This explains why they live here, why they came here in the first place, and maybe some of the troubles they faced. So I was very grateful to receive this manuscript, and I think it was quite sort of meaningful to publish it. So I found it very helpful, actually, since I've had overseas sales. This does help a lot, because sometimes if a book doesn't work in one market, it will work in another. If a book doesn't sell in Hong Kong, it might take off in Canada. The converse is true as well. Some of my bestsellers in Hong Kong don't sell overseas at all. You can never quite predict it, but it's very helpful having those overseas extra baskets to put your eggs in. But I found there is a hell of a lot of extra work in selling overseas. Dealing with overseas distributors, you've got to explain the books more thoroughly, because they're going to a foreign audience. You've got to create a hell of a lot of marketing materials for those distributors, sales reps who then go out to the bookshops in US and Canada, Australia and United Kingdom. You've got to provide what they call metadata, which is data about the book which they can use to try to find their customers. You've got to organise the shipping as well, which became a lot more expensive since COVID, since the ports were jammed up during COVID. That still never really got back to normal. So there's a lot of logistical work to be done in selling overseas, but it really does help you stay in business. I'll just use the new one, if that's right, because this is very, very representative of what I do. What did I do with my... this is basically exactly the kind of book I like to do. Do you want, shall I say? Oh, okay. Isn't it nice opening a book for the first time? Hey, ripping it open. You have to keep books in plastic wrap in Hong Kong because of the humidity, right? As well. But, so when I was saying what I have found success in publishing is real life Hong Kong stories, that also includes explaining Hong Kong really to the people who come to live here, the people who come to visit. And this recent book is a good example in kind, Hong Kong Shifts. It's interviews with the people who do shift work, often outdoors in Hong Kong, right? And I've found, I'm sure you know, that Hong Kong has really two universes of language. You know, there's the Cantonese, there's the English, and these universes don't often mix. You know, a lot of people cannot cross that language barrier. This is certainly true for most expats, and it's true for me. So this book is intended to interview people who, as a foreigner, you will often see working in Hong Kong, but you have no language in common. You don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin, they don't speak English. So this is interviews with people who you will see doing common jobs in Hong Kong. And this is portraits of them, and it's interviews with them in English and Chinese. And hopefully this can help to build understanding in Hong Kong of who we all are. This can help the readers understand who these people are, and hopefully encourage them to try to communicate with them the next time you meet a mechanic or a pen repairer or a taxi driver, a farmer. Try to communicate, try to learn a bit more about their lives. Hopefully this sort of book does the job of opening your eyes to a different kind of experience for you in Hong Kong. So in this case, the author is from Hong Kong, who did the interviews, the text. The photographer is from Belgium, so it's a mixture of local and foreign. And they came to me with the idea for the book because they'd already been doing the interviews as part of a project with exactly this same aim, trying to explain a different strata of Hong Kong life to foreigners who come in. So they've already done their own photography exhibitions for the book and workshops, and they thought it would be a good idea to do a book with the photos to maybe reach a wider audience, and I agreed with them, and so we just published it this summer. So now this can hopefully, in a different format, in a different art form, it will reach a different readership, not just in Hong Kong, but around the world as well. From a foreign perspective, looking at Hong Kong from outside, you'll often find that the books you'll easily find about Hong Kong are the bestsellers that were published decades ago. It's The World of Susie Wong, it's The Honourable Schoolboy, it's Fragrant Harbour, it's Kowloon Tong. They're all good books, but you can get a slightly one-dimensional view of Hong Kong only by reading those things that have been published by outsiders, by people from outside. So I think it's important for Hong Kong publishers publishing here to keep on bringing out these stories by people who live here or who have lived here, and from different branches of society, to show the city for the true complexity of multiculturalism and complexity that it really has. Well, Among the difficulties of publishing, of course, is that Hong Kong storage is quite expensive, so you've got to try and guess the right amount of books to print that you think you're going to be able to sell. And certainly having overseas sales helps that. So whenever I print a new book, I'll usually ship a third of the books overseas straight away. That helps. But every year we do a stock take and we have to work out what's been selling, what's not selling. And if books have been, if we've printed too many of any particular book, if they're not selling, we then have to recycle them, which is quite a sort of emotional thing to do. Yeah, so small stock room here. Yeah.
How many books here?
Oh, I should know that, shouldn't I? I don't know. I did a yeah.
And literally, it's quite a heavy burden.
It's a heavy burden. Yeah. So so these shelves, in fact, I sometimes think this when I'm in my stock room, I'm pushing books up. I sometimes think about this guy. It could easily happen, right? Unless you were stabbed by a pen or something, it could be the same, right? Yeah. A poetic way to go, anyway. I did a stock take at the end of December, and it said I should have 57,000 books somewhere, but I can only find 43,000 of them, and they're not all here. Most of them are in the bookshops. A lot of them are overseas in different countries like Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, UK, Ireland. But actually, this is only a part-time business for me, right? I do writing and editing for magazines. That's my income, right? SCMP, in-flight magazines, this sort of thing. So I write stories. So I spend half the time on this and half the time on that. So in that way, I'm not alone. I don't feel so alone. So this is what interests me, the book publishing, but the writing pays money. Yeah. So this is why I don't really need full-time staff anymore, because I get money from somewhere else to pay for me. This for me is the way I found to do it sensibly. Right? Even when I started Blacksmith, I was working part-time doing acting in Hong Kong movies, right? Because it's very flexible. When you get an acting job, actually, I did it for years. I think probably 200 movies I was probably in, and TV as well, and adverts, and music videos. Yeah. Just being the stereotypical guilo, who gets beaten up. Or I'm the lawyer who's got a suitcase full of money and I'm trying to buy land in the New Territories from villagers who are very stupid and naive, or I'm the drunk guilo outside a bar who gets kicked aside by the hero when he goes to get his girl. It's all really, or I'm the policeman in the office who doesn't understand the what's happening in Hong Kong. It's all really cliche and stereotype. So even before I started publishing, even before magazines or books, I was always a big reader, especially of books and articles about Hong Kong. I've always been interested in finding out about Hong Kong history and culture. And it was very lucky during the 90s especially. There were a lot of second-hand bookshops around Hong Kong, sometimes hidden away on the second or third floor. But if you knew where to find them, you'd walk up the steps. And one time I went into one in Wan Chai and I found this book, The Golden Guide to Hong Kong and Macau, which is from 1969. And it's a fabulous read, right? It's a guidebook written by someone who worked for the Far Eastern Economic Review at the time, a magazine. It's exploring Hong Kong, Kowloon, New Territories Islands, all from before I was born. And the author has a great opinionated style. There's a lot of things about Hong Kong he doesn't like, and he tells you about it in the book. So I found myself really lucky to find this little gem, right? And I read it and enjoyed it for many years, even the photos in it, black and white photos of Hong Kong from 40, 50 years ago. A few years later, I was in another second-hand bookshop, also in Wan Chai, and I found another book on the shelf by the same author, P.H.M. Jones. And I said to the woman running the second-hand bookshop, "That's funny, I've got another book by P.H.M. Jones at home. He's a wonderful writer from 1969. And the woman said, "Oh, he comes in here sometimes to give us his second-hand books." I said, "Really? He's still alive?" And she said, "Yeah, he's a wonderful bloke." So I said, "Oh, would you give him my number? Here's my card." So she did. She took my number. A few weeks later, I got a call from this old gentleman. You can tell people's age sometimes by their voice on the phone, a very tremulous voice. And he said, "It's Jones here. I heard you were looking for me." And I said, "Yes, I found your book in a second-hand bookshop, and I love it. Can I take you to lunch?" He said, "Oh, yes, why not? Why not?" He was living on Lantau Island, so I went over there, met him for lunch. I think he might have been about 90. He was still living in Hong Kong after all this time. And I brought the book with me, The Golden Guide to Hong Kong. And he hadn't seen a copy since, I think, 1970. He didn't get a copy when it was published. So I brought it over. I asked him if he would sign it for me. So he signed it for me there about 40, 50 years after it was published. And this was a wonderful experience. And I gave him a copy of a book that I'd written about hiking in Hong Kong. And I told him that he'd inspired me to do the same. This was a lovely meeting.